Claire Whitman received the DNA test results on a rainy November afternoon. In the white-painted mailbox in front of the suburban house, she had called the safest place in her life for 13 years. The rain was not heavy, only cold, thin, and persistent, falling steadily on the porch roof, on the white fence, on the lawn Andrew trimmed every Sunday morning like a ritual meant to prove that everything in their life was still orderly. The neighborhood on the outskirts of Ohio was cruelly quiet. The minivan sat neatly in front of the garage. Autumn wreaths still hung on the neighbors' doors. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once and went silent. From the outside, the Whitman house still looked like the kind of home where people believed a decent married couple lived inside. With a kitchen that smelled of morning coffee, ordinary conversations about the electric bill, dentist appointments, dinner, work, and weekend plans too small to hurt anyone. But Claire stood in front of the mailbox, holding a white envelope with a laboratory logo in the corner, knowing that the moment she opened it, the house behind her might no longer be a home. The envelope was not heavy. It was so light it almost felt insulting. After all the sleepless nights, all the times Andrew had looked at her as if she were a woman destroying her own marriage with her imagination, all the sentences, "You're being paranoid. Do you hear yourself? You need help. I'm genuinely worried about your mental state." The truth had finally arrived in a few thin sheets of paper. Claire did not bring the envelope inside. She did not have the courage to walk through the front door, set her purse on the kitchen chair, hang her coat like it was any ordinary afternoon, and open it under the light where Andrew could come in at any moment and say in that terrifyingly calm voice of his, "What are you doing now?" She got into the car, shut the door, and let the rain tap against the windshield. Inside the car, there was the smell of cold leather, damp paper, and the light perfume she had sprayed on that morning before work. A lavender scent Andrew had once said made him feel peaceful. She placed the envelope on the steering wheel. Her hands were shaking so badly, it took her 3 tries to tear open the edge. Inside were the results, the black printed text, the legal explanations, the sample codes, the false names filed according to the lawyer's instructions, and then the confirmation line sitting in the middle of the page like a hammer coming down. Probability of biological paternity, 99. 99%. Andrew Whitman was the biological father of Caleb Grant, the 5-year-old son of Melissa Grant. Claire read the line once, then a second time, then a third. She had thought that when the truth finally came, she would cry or scream or feel vindicated because she had finally been proven right. But there was no vindication, no victory. She only sat motionless in the car, listening to the rain run in long streaks down the glass, her hand gripping the edge of the paper until it creased, feeling a deep cold open inside her chest. Because if she was right about Caleb, then she had never been crazy. And if she had never been crazy, then what had Andrew been doing to her all these months? If her intuition was not an illness, not jealousy, not the paranoia he kept naming, then the most painful thing was not simply that he had a child with another woman. The most painful thing was that he had looked into the eyes of his wife, the woman who had slept beside him for more than 10 years, the woman who had cared for his mother after hip surgery, the woman who had stood by him when his career nearly collapsed, and he had made her doubt her own memory, her emotions, her sanity, all to protect his life. Claire lifted her eyes through the curtain of rain. The living room window was lit. Through the blurred glass, she saw Andrew's shadow cross the room, one hand holding his phone, his head slightly bowed. Then he stopped near the sofa and laughed at something on the screen. He did not yet know that the biggest lie of his life had just been delivered straight to their mailbox. And in that moment, Claire understood that the DNA result did not save her immediately. It did something simpler, colder. It put solid ground back beneath her feet after Andrew had spent far too long making her believe that ground had never existed. Before Claire was called crazy, she had been the kind of woman people described with safe words. Calm, reasonable, graceful, steady. She was 39, an accountant for a network of dental clinics in town. A job that was not glamorous but demanded precision, patience, and the ability to remember small details other people overlook. Claire remembered insurance payment dates, remembered who needed supplemental documents sent, remembered that the second printer always jammed unless you tapped the tray gently, remembered which coworker liked coffee without sugar and which one hid tears in the break room after saying, "I'm fine." At home, she had also been the one who kept things running smoothly. She remembered Andrew's mother's birthday, remembered the oil change schedule, remembered the soup Andrew liked when he had a cold, remembered that he hated towels folded the wrong way, remembered that on days when he was tense, he would put his watch down on the kitchen counter a little too hard and still say, "Nothing's wrong." She was not weak. She was not someone who easily lost control. But Andrew had a very subtle way of making her strength look like tension, her intuition look like overthinking, and her pain look like a problem that needed to be managed. When they were newly married, Claire thought Andrew's calmness was a gift. He spoke slowly, did not get angry easily, rarely raised his voice, and in a world where she had grown up with a father who slammed doors whenever he was upset, that composure had once made her feel safe. Andrew was the kind of man people trusted easily. He worked as a regional manager for a medical equipment company, wore well-fitted shirts, spoke respectfully to older people, remembered the neighbors' names, knew how to choose wine for dinner, and always seemed like the most reasonable person in the room. When they argued, Andrew did not yell. He would simply lean back in his chair, look at her with tired eyes, and say, "Claire, do you hear yourself?" Or, "I didn't say that. You're remembering it wrong." Or, "You're turning a small thing into something huge again." At first, those sentences sounded like gentle corrections from a mature husband to a wife who was too emotional. Claire had believed that, if she was hurt because he forgot their anniversary dinner, he would say, "I didn't forget. I thought we agreed to move it to the weekend." You always hold expectations you never say out loud, then get disappointed when other people don't guess them. If she remembered him promising to come home early, he would say, "No, I said I would try." Those are different words. If she felt him becoming distant, he would say, "You're looking for problems because work is stressing you out." Each sentence by itself was not enough to break a person, but over the years, they gathered like drops of water falling on stone, quiet, without spectacle, slowly wearing something down inside. Claire began adding "maybe" to her own memories. Maybe he really had not said that. Maybe she was sensitive. Maybe she remembered wrong. Maybe she was making too much of it. By the time Melissa Grant came back to town, Claire had been trained for too long to doubt herself before she doubted Andrew. Melissa appeared again on a Saturday afternoon at a fundraiser at Maple Ridge Elementary, where Claire had agreed to help run the bake sale table because one of her coworkers had a child there. The schoolyard was decorated with blue and yellow bunting. Parents stood in small groups holding paper cups of coffee. Children ran around the ring toss game, and the smell of hot dogs, chocolate chip cookies, and damp grass mingled under the late autumn sun. Claire was rearranging a tray of cupcakes when she heard Andrew behind her say, "Melissa?" His voice was not loud, but there was a slight tension in it, enough to make Claire turn around. Melissa Grant stood near the registration table, wearing a cream-colored coat, her light brown hair tied low, one hand holding a tote bag and the other holding the hand of a little boy who looked about 5 years old. Claire remembered Melissa. She had worked with Andrew years earlier, occasionally showing up at company parties, the kind of lively, confident woman who made other people feel noticed when she spoke to them. Andrew had talked about Melissa quite often for a while, saying she was good at handling difficult clients, then suddenly stopped mentioning her at all. When Claire asked, Andrew said Melissa had left the company and moved to another city, his voice completely ordinary. Now Melissa was standing in front of them, and the child beside her made Claire feel her heart stop. The boy had dark brown hair, a small but defined jawline, gray-blue eyes, and when he laughed because someone handed him a balloon, the corner of his mouth tilted to one side exactly the way Andrew's did whenever he tried not to laugh during serious meetings. There was a small dimple in his left cheek. Andrew had that dimple too, softer now that he was older but very clear in childhood photos of him. Claire hated herself immediately for the thought. Children could look like anyone. Genetics were strange. People could see familiar faces in clouds if they stared long enough. Melissa had once said, through a mutual friend, that her son's father was a man who had left before the child was born. Claire knew the story vaguely, not in detail. She told herself she was only reacting because she was surprised, because Melissa had once been close to Andrew, because Andrew rarely mentioned her anymore. But when Andrew saw the child, his face hardened for a fraction of a second. Not long enough for anyone else to catch. Then he smiled, the perfect social smile. Melissa walked over. "Andrew, Claire, it's been so long." She leaned in and hugged Andrew quickly, like an old coworker. Andrew returned the gesture just enough. "Melissa, when did you move back to town?" "A few months ago. I'm working part-time for a nonprofit nearby." Melissa looked down at her son. Caleb, say hi to Mr. Whitman. The boy looked up. Hi, Andrew bent slightly. Hey, buddy. Claire heard what was missing from his words. He did not ask how old the boy was. He did not ask his name. He did not say, "Is this your son?" the way someone truly unfamiliar would have. He simply greeted him, like a man prepared in advance not to ask the wrong question. Melissa smiled tensely. Caleb is a little shy at first. The boy looked at Andrew longer than a child usually looks at a stranger, then said with the innocent carelessness that can make adults freeze, "Mommy said you used to be her favorite person." Melissa tightened her grip on his hand at once. Caleb, Andrew laughed, but the sound was low and dry. "Your mommy probably exaggerates." Claire stood beside the tray of cupcakes, holding the serving tongs, and felt a small piece of truth drop somewhere inside her, not big enough to name, but sharp enough not to disappear. On the drive home that evening, light rain began to fall, and the streetlights slid in long yellow streaks across the windshield. Andrew drove with one hand on the wheel, the other tapping lightly to the rhythm of an old song on the radio. Claire sat in the passenger seat, watching raindrops run sideways across the glass, waiting for her heartbeat to settle. She did not want to ask. She knew where this kind of question would lead. But the silence in the car thickened until she felt that if she did not speak, it would follow her into the bedroom, into her dreams, into the next morning. "Melissa looks different," she said first, very softly. Andrew did not look at her. "Yeah, it's been a long time. Her son is sweet." "Yeah. Did you know him before?" This time Andrew's fingers stopped tapping on the steering wheel. "Not really. I've seen pictures on Facebook a few times." "You don't use Facebook anymore." "I mean before, or LinkedIn." "I don't remember." Claire turned to look at him. "You don't think he looks like you?" The air in the car changed immediately. Andrew laughed, not loudly, but with irritation hidden underneath. "Do you hear yourself?" That sentence. Claire felt her body fold inward, as if by learned reflex. "I'm only asking." "No, Claire, you're looking at a child at a school fundraiser and turning him into evidence for your imagination." "I didn't say evidence. I said resemblance. Children look like all kinds of people. Doing this to a child is not okay." "Andrew." No, you need to hear yourself. Melissa is someone I used to work with. She was a little attached to me, yes, and I always kept my distance. Now she's back in town, she has a kid, and instead of being kind, you immediately build a story in your head." Claire fell silent. She felt ashamed, though she was not sure what she had done that deserved shame. Andrew sighed, softening his voice like a man trying to save his wife from herself. "I know you've been stressed lately. Work has been a lot. You're not sleeping well, but you can't let thoughts like this ruin you." "I'm sorry," Claire said. The apology came out almost automatically. Andrew placed his hand on her knee for a second. "I'm not angry. I'm just worried about you." For a moment, she almost believed him, almost let his hand make her feel safe. But that night, around 1 in the morning, Claire woke up thirsty. The bed beside her was empty. She went downstairs, meaning to go to the kitchen, when she heard Andrew's voice on the back porch. The glass door was cracked open just slightly. The rain had stopped, and cold air slipped into the living room. Andrew spoke low into the phone. She noticed. A pause. "No, I handled it." Claire stood barefoot on the cold hardwood floor, one hand braced against the wall, and for the first time in her life, she did not ask herself whether she was imagining things. She asked, what exactly had he just handled? In the days that followed, Andrew became more careful with his phone, but not so careful that it looked suspicious. That was what frightened Claire. He did not hide clumsily. He hid like a man who knew exactly how much normalcy to leave visible, so that no one could point at it and call it strange. His phone still occasionally sat on the table, but face down. The password was still one Claire did not know. When a call came in, he no longer rushed out of the room. He simply looked at the screen and said, "I'll call back later," like a man with nothing to conceal. Melissa began appearing more often in places that were supposed to feel accidental. A community parent meeting, the grocery store, another fundraiser for the library, the cafe near the clinic where Claire worked. Caleb was always with her, or appeared in the photos Melissa posted. And every time Claire saw the boy, she had to fight the same feeling. The tilt of his head, the eyes, the smile, the way he furrowed his brow while concentrating on coloring in the corner of the library room. Just like Andrew reading financial reports. One day, Melissa posted a picture of Caleb wearing a Chicago Cubs baseball shirt, Andrew's favorite team since childhood. The caption read, "Some loves leave fingerprints." Claire stared at that line during her lunch break, her fingers going cold against the screen. She took a screenshot, then she hated herself for taking a screenshot of a child. She did not want to turn Caleb into evidence. The boy had done nothing wrong. He was just a child who liked balloons, baseball shirts, and had a dimple that should not have been capable of collapsing adult lives. That evening, Claire found Andrew's old family album in the living room cabinet. She opened a photo of Andrew at 5 years old, standing in front of his mother's old house, hair messy, striped t-shirt, smiling with that crooked mouth. She placed her phone with Caleb's picture beside it. The two faces did not look vaguely similar. They almost seemed to speak to each other across 35 years. Claire sat on the living room floor for a long time, the album open on her lap, the phone dimming in her hand. Andrew walked in and saw her. "What are you doing?" She closed the album too quickly. "Nothing." He looked at the album cover, then at her face. "Claire," just one word, but there was already a warning in it. She said, "I was just looking at old pictures." Andrew exhaled. "Don't start that again. I haven't said anything. Your face says enough." He stepped forward and took the album from her hands, not violently but firmly. "I don't know what you want to find, but you need to stop. I want you to answer me directly for once." "I already answered. Did you ever sleep with Melissa?" The question fell out of her mouth before she had time to soften it. Andrew stood still. Then he laughed very quietly, the kind of laugh with no humor in it, only disappointment. "Wow," one word. It made her feel small at once. "I'm asking you seriously." "No, you're not asking. You're accusing. If there's nothing, why can't you just say no?" He looked at her with sadness so well performed it almost hurt. "No," he said at last. "I never slept with Melissa. I am not that boy's father, and I'm genuinely sad that my wife can look at me and think I'm that kind of man." Claire should have felt relieved. She had received an answer, but what remained in the room was not relief. It was the feeling that he had handed her a blank sheet of paper written over in invisible ink. She could not read it, but she knew something was there. Andrew did not only gaslight her in private. He began building a version of Claire as unstable in front of other people. Slowly, skillfully, like someone laying bricks in daylight without anyone realizing it was a wall. At his mother Elaine Whitman's birthday dinner at the Italian restaurant the family always went to, Andrew placed a hand on Claire's back when she was quieter than usual and said to his mother in a worried voice, "Claire hasn't been sleeping well lately. Work has been really stressing her out." Elaine looked at Claire immediately, her eyes full of the kind of pity a mother-in-law gives when she has always believed her son could not be wrong. "Are you okay, honey?" Claire forced a smile. "I'm fine," Andrew sighed, not loudly. "She keeps saying she's fine, but I'm really worried." Andrew's sister Bate leaned across the table. "Have you tried therapy?" "I don't mean anything by it. I think everyone should go." Claire looked at Andrew. He was not looking at her. He was cutting a piece of lasagna for his mother like a devoted son. "Andrew," she said quietly, "don't do this here." He looked up, his face full of confusion. "Do what?" Elaine placed a hand over Claire's. "Andrew is only worried about you." Claire felt heat rise in her cheeks. "He isn't worried about me. He's making everyone doubt me." The table went silent for a moment. Andrew closed his eyes as if in pain. "You see," he said to his mother very softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "this is exactly what I was talking about." That sentence made Claire feel as if she had been pushed out of her own body. Any reaction from her now became proof that he was right. If she stayed silent, she was not okay. If she spoke, she was lashing out. If she cried, she was too sensitive. If she stayed calm, he would say she was cold and distant. That night after they got home, Claire received a text from Rachel, her closest friend. "Are you really okay? Andrew told me you think Melissa's child is his." Claire sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the message, and felt the floor beneath her tilt. Andrew had told people first. He had planted the story before she ever had the chance to tell the truth. Not because he was worried about her, because he needed people to hear her suspicion in his voice first, so that when she spoke, it would already smell like illness. She typed a reply to Rachel, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted it again. Finally, she wrote only, "I don't know if I'm okay, but I don't think I'm crazy." Rachel answered almost immediately, "Then come to my house tomorrow. Bring everything you have." Before she went to Rachel's, Claire made an appointment with a therapist. She did it one morning in the clinic parking lot before work. Both hands on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the pharmacy sign across the road. She had searched online for words that made her feel ashamed. Symptoms of paranoia, irrational jealousy, anxiety after marital stress, obsessive suspicion. She read articles about anxiety, trauma, attachment, about people who had been betrayed and then began imagining signs. She wanted someone to tell her she was not broken, or if she was broken, at least to give a name to the crack. The therapist was named Dana Alvarez, around 50, with a low voice and no hurry in her manner. In the first session, Claire said very little because she was afraid that hearing herself out loud would make her sound like a jealous woman in a cheap story. Wife sees another woman's child resembling her husband, wife suspects. Husband says wife is crazy. But Dana did not laugh, did not frown, did not write too much. She simply asked, "When you ask a question, does your husband answer the question, or does he attack your ability to perceive reality?" Claire was silent. That question did not confirm that Andrew was Caleb's father. It did not tell her she was right about the DNA, but it opened another door. Claire thought back to every time Andrew had said, "You're remembering it wrong. You're making too much of this. Do you hear yourself? I'm worried about you. You need help." Very rarely did he answer directly. Very rarely did he say, "This is the truth. This is the evidence. I understand why you are afraid." He always moved the focus away from her question and toward what kind of woman she was for daring to ask. Claire left therapy not relieved, but more awake. That night when Andrew asked where she had gone after work, she said, "Therapy." He looked at her quickly. "I'm glad. I think it'll be good for you." "For me or for your story about me?" Andrew set his glass down. "That is a very unfair thing to say." Claire looked at him. Before, that sentence would have made her apologize. Now she only said, "Maybe." She decided not to ask Andrew anymore. Not because she no longer suspected, because she finally understood that asking him was like handing him another chance to edit the stage. If she needed the truth, she would have to find it where he could not control it. Paper, dates, money, other people, and eventually DNA. Claire began with small pieces of paper. She did not storm into Andrew's office like a movie scene. She did not smash open drawers or grab his phone. She did what she did best, made a spreadsheet, a private file on her personal laptop named something harmless. Insurance review. Column 1, date. Column 2, event. Column 3, evidence. Column 4, what Andrew had said. She went back to the year Melissa left the company. Andrew had taken a 3-day business trip to Cincinnati with a small team, including Melissa. 2 months later, Melissa abruptly quit. Andrew said she had burned out. 6 months after that, there was a credit card charge from Andrew at an obstetrics clinic outside Dayton, a place Andrew had never mentioned visiting. At the time, he had explained it by saying he had helped a male coworker pay because the man's wallet was locked. Claire had believed him because why would she not? There was a transfer labeled M.G. Emergency from Andrew's personal account, not their joint account, but she found it in an old email confirmation synced to the family computer. There were regular cash withdrawals after Caleb was born, not large amounts, but enough to form a pattern. There was a pharmacy receipt near the area where Melissa had once lived. There was an email Andrew had sent to himself with a scanned medical insurance document unrelated to them. Claire built the timeline until 3 in the morning on many nights, her eyes dry, her back aching, but her mind strangely clear. She no longer felt as if she were falling. She was walking down a dark road, but at least each step had a marker. Then she found an old email on the computer Andrew had used before replacing his laptop. Maybe he had forgotten to log out of a secondary account. Maybe some emails had been saved offline. The subject line was, "He deserves to know someday." Sender, Melissa Grant. Time, 3 months after Caleb was born. Claire opened it, her heart beating so hard she could hear it in her ears. The email was not long. "I won't force you to choose. You already made that clear. But don't pretend he doesn't have your eyes. Don't send money and call that being decent. He deserves to know someday. So does she." Claire read the word she and knew it meant her. Not because her name was there, but because Melissa had seen her inside the lie. At least enough to know there was a wife on the other side of the door. Claire did not cry. She shook with anger cleaner than fear, not only because Andrew might be Caleb's father, but because Melissa had written that years ago. Andrew had read it, and still he had come home, still kissed Claire on the forehead, still let her host Christmas dinner, still let her believe Caleb was an obsession in her head when he himself knew someone else had once said the same thing. She no longer asked, "Am I crazy?" She asked, "What did he do to make me believe I was?" At that exact moment, the office door opened. Andrew stood in the doorway wearing a white t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep, his eyes dropping to the screen. Claire did not close the email in time. For 1 second, he did not perform. His face revealed a cold sharpness, so clear that Claire understood this was Andrew when he was not prepared. Then he stepped inside. "What are you doing on my computer?" The confrontation in the office was the trap Claire almost fell into completely. She turned the screen toward him. "Explain this email." Andrew looked at it very quickly, and instead of paling or apologizing, he exhaled like someone finally having a concern about his wife confirmed. Claire, just her name, but there was a diagnosis inside. "Don't. You're on my old computer in the middle of the night. You're reading private emails from years ago. Do you know how this sounds? Don't turn how I found it into the issue so you don't have to talk about what it says. What it says is that Melissa was once obsessed with me. She wrote that Caleb has your eyes because she wanted me to feel guilty. She was always like that. She wasn't stable." Claire stood up, the chair scraping hard behind her. "And I'm not stable either, right? Anyone who questions you isn't stable." Andrew looked at her with painful pity. "You're shaking. You haven't slept. You're building a case out of old email fragments. I really think you need more help." "I am getting help." "Good. Then tell your therapist you're going through computers and obsessing over a child." Claire began to cry, not because she was weak, but because her body could no longer bear the way he stood there, so clean inside his words after everything. "Are you his father?" she asked, almost shouting. "Answer me. Just once. Look at me and answer like a human being." Andrew took out his phone. "I'm calling Rachel." "What? Or my mother? Someone needs to know the state you're in." Claire froze. He was not calling to help. He was calling for a witness. "Don't do that," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't turn my reaction into my crime." Andrew looked at her colder now. "Look at yourself." Those 3 words made Claire feel as if someone had stamped something across her forehead. Then he said, "You need help, Claire." After that, he suggested they temporarily separate for Claire's mental health, saying maybe she needed space, that he did not want to trigger her thoughts any further. The next morning, Elaine called. "Andrew said you had an episode last night." Episode. Claire sat at the kitchen chair, holding a cup of cold coffee, listening to her mother-in-law use the word as if Claire were a patient in her son's file. "I did not have an episode," she said. "I found an email." Elaine sighed. "Honey, sometimes when we're under stress, we read everything in the most painful possible way." Claire hung up before she cried. Then she drove to Rachel's house. Rachel did not ask Claire if she was sure the way everyone else asked. She opened the door, saw her friend's face, and held Claire tightly. The house smelled of coffee, toast, and the vanilla candle Rachel always burned too heavily. Claire sat at the kitchen table and laid out her laptop. The timeline, photos of Caleb, photos of Andrew as a child, the printed email from Melissa, and the list of transactions. She talked for almost an hour, her voice sometimes too fast, sometimes breaking. Rachel did not interrupt. At the end, she said only, "You're not crazy. You're being exhausted into confusion." That sentence made Claire truly cry for the first time. Not because it proved anything, simply because someone was finally standing on the same side as her perception. Rachel reviewed the timeline, her brow furrowed. "I remember when Melissa worked with Andrew. He talked about her constantly, then suddenly, he never mentioned her again. I thought it was odd at the time." Claire wiped her face. "I'm scared that if I keep going, I'll lose my marriage." Rachel looked at her for a long moment. "Claire, do you still have a marriage to lose? Or do you only have a story he's controlling?" The sentence hurt, but it was true. Rachel suggested the thing Claire feared most, DNA. Claire reacted immediately. "I don't want to secretly take a sample from Caleb. He's a child. I'm not telling you to do something wrong. But what if Melissa wants the truth too? She knew he had a wife. Yes, she's not innocent, but maybe Andrew used her in a different way." Claire hated that it made sense. She wanted Melissa to be a clear enemy, the woman who had stepped into her marriage and let her child appear like a living mirror. But Melissa's email did not sound like someone who only wanted to win. It sounded like someone tired of having a child denied. That night, Claire texted Melissa from her own number. "I think it's time we talk about Caleb." She stared at the sent message, her heart pounding. Melissa did not answer right away. 14 minutes later, the screen lit up. "I wondered how long it would take you to ask." They met at a small cafe 20 minutes outside their town, a place no one from their suburb had any reason to be. Melissa arrived first. She was not wearing the perfect cream coat from the school event, not smiling confidently, not wearing bold lipstick. She sat at a corner table with both hands wrapped around a cup of tea, the tired face of a woman who had spent years living with something she both wanted to hide and wanted someone to drag into the light. Claire sat down across from her. For a few seconds, they only looked at each other. Claire had thought that if she ever met Melissa, she would be too angry to speak. But the woman in front of her was not a symbol. She was a real woman, with dark circles under her eyes, fingers pinching the rim of her cup, and a gaze both defensive and exhausted. "Is Caleb Andrew's son?" Claire asked, no greeting, no circling around it. Melissa closed her eyes for 1 second. "I believe so." Claire felt the answer pass through her like a slow blade. "Believe? I never had a test. Andrew would never agree." "But you knew he had a wife." Melissa opened her eyes. Yes, she did not excuse herself right away. That made Claire uncomfortable. "I'm not here to fight over him," Claire said. "Good, because I don't have the energy to play the other woman in his story anymore." Melissa told her. Andrew and she had been involved during the Cincinnati business trip. Not just once, but not some beautiful love story either. No matter how she had once tried to lie to herself. Andrew told her his marriage to Claire was cold, that they lived like roommates, that Claire no longer needed him, that he was waiting for the right time to leave because he did not want Claire to fall apart. Melissa had believed him because she wanted to. When she became pregnant, Andrew panicked. At first, he said he would do the right thing. Then he said the timing was wrong, work was complicated, his mother was fragile, Claire was not well, he needed time. Then time became money. He transferred funds, paid a few bills, visited Caleb once when the boy was a newborn, then never came again. He told me that if I pushed too hard, he would cut off all support and say I made it up, Melissa said, her voice hoarse. And every time I asked him to acknowledge his child, he called me destructive. Claire looked at her. He called me crazy. Melissa laughed, but her eyes were wet. So he made both of us the problem so he wouldn't have to be the problem. Claire did not want to feel sympathy for Melissa. She did not want to give this woman any relief. Melissa had known Andrew had a wife. Melissa had stepped into that, but looking at her, Claire also saw another version of the same mechanism. Andrew had given each woman a story that made her doubt herself if she dared demand the truth. To Claire, she was the paranoid wife. To Melissa, she was the destructive woman. To his family, Claire was unstable. To himself, perhaps Andrew was always the victim of circumstances. "I want a DNA test," Claire said. "Not to hurt Caleb, not to use him against you, but I need solid ground." Melissa looked down at her tea. "I need it too. Caleb needs it more than either of us." She agreed. The days spent waiting for the results felt like living in the same house, with a bomb beneath the floor that only Claire knew was ticking. Andrew did not know Melissa had agreed. He only knew Claire had grown quieter, and when he could no longer make her react by diagnosing her, he switched tactics and became gentle. He cooked dinner on Tuesday, shrimp pasta he had not made in a long time. He bought hydrangeas, the kind she had once loved before the smell of flowers in the house started reminding her of apologies with a purpose. He washed the dishes, wiped the counters, asked about her workday in a voice so warm that part of her ached from remembering how much she had once loved that voice. "I miss the old Claire," he said one evening as they sat across from each other in the kitchen. "The woman who laughed, the woman who didn't look at me like I'm the enemy." Claire looked at the glass of water in front of her. "I miss her too." Andrew lifted his head, hope flickering in his eyes. "Then let me help you get back to her." Claire looked at him. "I want the woman I was before you made her doubt herself." Andrew's face closed very slightly, like a glass door being pulled shut. "You still believe I did something to you. I know you did something to me. You see, this is why I'm worried. You're talking like I'm abusive. Not every form of violence leaves a bruise." He looked at her for a long time. Then he stood and carried his plate to the sink. "I don't know how to talk to you anymore." Claire thought, exactly, "because I am no longer standing where you put me." While waiting for the results, she met with a lawyer, a woman named Marjorie Wells, who listened to the whole story and spoke very clearly. "Do not confront him until everything is backed up. Do not let him pull you into an argument that could be recorded and reframed. And remember, the DNA truth is one part. The other part is the pattern he used to destroy your credibility." Claire backed up the timeline, emails, photos, notes from therapy, and messages with Melissa. She did not feel strong. She felt like someone packing documents inside a burning house, knowing she could not save everything, only the papers proving the fire was real. Then the envelope arrived, and after reading the results in the car, Claire did not go into the house right away. She photographed every page, sent them to the lawyer, sent them to Rachel, saved them to the cloud, then placed the original in her purse. She sat a few minutes longer, watching Andrew through the living room window. He was still laughing at his phone. She did not know who he was messaging. It no longer mattered. When Claire opened the door and stepped inside, Andrew looked up. "You were in the car for a long time." "I checked the mail." He looked at the envelope in her hand. Something crossed his face very quickly. "What's that?" Claire set her purse on the kitchen chair, took out the results and placed them on the table. "The thing you can't talk your way out of." Andrew stood slowly. The Whitman kitchen, once the heart of their home, suddenly seemed too bright, too clean, too quiet. Pale afternoon light came through the window, falling across the fruit bowl, the coffee maker, the wooden table where Claire had once signed Christmas cards, planned vacation budgets, wrapped gifts for Andrew's mother, and cried silently after every time he told her she remembered things wrong. Andrew picked up the paper. Claire watched his face as he read the 99% line. For the first time, language abandoned him. The color drained from his face. His jaw tightened. He read the whole page, then set it down. "This doesn't mean what you think." Claire almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the sentence was so perfectly him. Even paperwork, he tried to drag into ambiguity. "It means exactly what it says. Melissa set you up. Melissa agreed to the test because of Caleb. You went behind my back. No, I went behind the lies you built in front of me." Andrew pointed at the paper. "Do you know how many people this could destroy? You destroyed them first. I only opened the envelope." He began pacing the kitchen, running a hand through his hair. "You don't understand. Things were complicated back then. You and I were going through a difficult time. Melissa took advantage of that. I didn't know for sure Caleb was mine." Claire laid down one page after another. Melissa's email, the MG emergency transfer, the business trip timeline, photos of Caleb and Andrew as a child. Melissa's text confirming their meeting. "You knew enough to send money, knew enough to call after the fundraiser and say, 'She noticed.' Knew enough to tell people I was unstable before I ever had the chance to tell them what I suspected." Andrew looked at the email, then at her. "You prepared a case against your husband?" "No, I prepared solid ground so my husband couldn't keep pushing me into a hole." He went silent. His silence was his first unedited confession. Claire did not scream. She did not throw papers in his face. She spoke slowly, clearly, like a woman finally reclaiming her voice after months of speaking in a room where no one listened. "You did not just cheat. You did not just have a child with Melissa. You made me believe the problem was my mind. You told your mother, Rachel, that I wasn't okay. You turned every time I broke down into evidence against me. You called it concern. It was not concern. It was control." Andrew sat down, looking smaller than himself for the first time. "I was afraid of losing everything." Claire looked at him. "So you decided to take me away from myself first." He opened his mouth, but no sentence was enough. Claire picked up her phone. "I called a lawyer." Andrew's head snapped up. "Claire's no. Don't say my name like you still have the right to pull me back." She took the original DNA result from the table and put it in her purse. "Tomorrow, you will leave this house. If you want to talk about assets, the lawyers can talk. If you want to talk about Caleb, Melissa is waiting for you to finally be a father with more than bank transfers. And if you want to talk about me being crazy." As she stopped, looking straight at him, "Talk to the paper." The truth spreading through the family was neither clean nor immediate. Andrew tried to do what he always did: control how people heard things before they saw them. He called his mother, saying Claire had secretly done a DNA test, that Melissa had manipulated her, that Claire was acting extremely. But this time, Claire did not arrive empty-handed. At the meeting in the lawyer's office a week later, Elaine sat beside Andrew, Bate behind them, her face tense. Claire sat across from them with Rachel beside her, while Marjorie opened the folder. No one yelled. That calmness was exactly what took away Andrew's advantage. Claire placed the timeline on the table. "This is the business trip. This is when Melissa became pregnant. This is the email she sent Andrew. This is the money. This is the DNA result. These are the messages Andrew sent the family saying I wasn't okay before I ever told anyone what I suspected." Elaine read, the color slowly leaving her face. Bate lifted a hand to her mouth when she saw the photo of Andrew at 5 beside the photo of Caleb. Andrew tried to say, "Everyone is letting Claire stage a trial." Claire turned to them. "You all watched me break down. None of you asked what he had done to make me break." Elaine began to cry. "Claire, I didn't know. You didn't want to know." The sentence landed like a slap, but Claire did not take it back. After a moment, Bate said very softly, "I did think the boy looked like you." Andrew turned to his sister. Bate looked down. "At the fundraiser, I saw it, but I thought I was imagining things." The final twist did not explode like a bomb. It came like black mold on a wall after someone removed a painting. Someone had suspected. No one had spoken. No one wanted to stain the image of the rational man in the family. Melissa did not attend the meeting, but she sent a letter through her lawyer. In it, she admitted her relationship with Andrew, admitted she had known he was married, admitted her own wrongdoing, but also made clear that Andrew had promised paid, demanded silence, and called her destructive every time she asked him to acknowledge Caleb. Reading the letter did not make Claire feel lighter. It did not make Melissa a friend. It did not make her innocent, but it completed the shape of Andrew. A man who was not afraid of lying, only afraid that the two women he had harmed would stop doubting themselves and begin comparing notes. The fallout with Caleb was the part Claire did not know where to place inside herself. Andrew finally had to meet with Melissa and lawyers to discuss legal responsibility, financial support, and the acknowledgement of paternity. Caleb did not understand it all. He only knew that many adults were speaking in low voices, that his mother cried in the bathroom, and that a man named Andrew suddenly appeared in his life like an answer arriving too late. Claire did not hate Caleb. That did not mean looking at his photo did not hurt. Some days she felt such pity for him she could barely breathe, because he had been denied by a man fully capable of being a father, and yet too cowardly to be decent. Some days she saw the dimple in his cheek in a picture, and had to put the phone down because the wound was still too alive. Melissa texted her once, "I don't expect your forgiveness, but thank you for forcing the truth into the light." Caleb deserved more than envelopes of money. Claire did not answer right away. Finally, she wrote, "Caleb deserved the truth. So did I, that was all." Andrew tried to come back to Claire with regret. Once he understood he could no longer deny anything. He sent a long email saying he did not know how to get out of the first mistake, that each lie had led to another, that he was terrified of losing her because she was the best thing in his life. Claire read that sentence and felt an exhaustion older than the words. If she was the best thing in his life, why had he spent months breaking that best thing from the inside? He said he was sorry. Claire believed he was sorry, but regret over being exposed is different from grief over destroying someone else. The separation unfolded in cold silence. Assets, accounts, cars, the house. Andrew left first, moving into an apartment near his office. When he rolled his suitcase toward the door, he looked at Claire as if waiting for her to soften. "Do you really want to end all this?" he asked. Claire stood in the hallway, where the afternoon light fell across a small scratch in the floor she had once meant to repair. "No," she said. "You ended it every time you looked at my pain and told me I was imagining it." He lowered his head. For 1 second, she saw the man she had once loved, or the version of him he had once allowed her to believe was real. But she did not step closer. Some doors only open again, so you can be pulled back into the same old room. She let him go. The day Claire moved out of the Whitman house, it did not rain. That felt strange to her, as if the sky did not understand that a sorrowful ritual needed music. She walked through each room after the movers had carried out the last boxes. The living room looked emptier, with square patches of dust on the wall where wedding photos had once hung. Kitchen was clean, cold, the wooden table where she had placed the DNA result, bearing no visible mark of the afternoon that changed its meaning. She stood at the sink and remembered the mornings Andrew made coffee, the way he used to stand behind her and place his hands on her waist, remembered the jokes, the real days, the dinners before any secrets had been discovered. That was the cruelty of betrayal. It did not erase the good. It made the good unsafe to remember. Claire placed her hand on the counter and took a deep breath. She did not say goodbye to the house. The house had not betrayed her. The person inside it had. The house had learned too much of Andrew's voice, too many of his sighs, too many sentences like, "You're imagining things again." Too many nights when Claire stood alone in the kitchen wondering if her own mind was turning against her. She did not want to live in a place where her memory had been put on trial every day. Her new apartment was much smaller, on the second floor of a quiet building near a park. No white fence, no large kitchen, no dining room big enough for 10 people. But on her first morning there, Claire made coffee in a small machine, stood by the window looking at the maple tree in the shared yard, and there was no one behind her sighing when she spilled a little water on the counter. No one telling her she was sensitive. No one asking if she could hear herself. The silence at first was not peaceful. It was empty, cold, unfamiliar. But it did not distort her. That was the difference. Claire continued therapy. She went to work. She met Rachel every Thursday. Some days she still opened the evidence folder, not to torment herself, but to remember that it had truly happened. The DNA result was kept in a moisture-proof envelope in the drawer of her desk. It was not a trophy. It was an anchor, a thin piece of paper proving she had never been crazy, that her intuition had tried to save her, while the man she loved tried to make her doubt the alarm bell inside her own body. One evening, months later, Andrew texted, "I never meant to make you feel crazy." Claire stared at the sentence for a long time. She typed, "But you did." then deleted it. She typed, "That was the point," then deleted that too. In the end, she did not answer, not because she had nothing to say, but because she had spent too many years speaking into a room where Andrew always adjusted the echo. Now the silence belonged to her. Claire had once thought the worst thing a husband could do was cheat. Then she thought the worst thing was having a secret child. But in the end, she understood there was a betrayal deeper than the body, deeper than blood, deeper than a DNA report. When the person you share your life with tries to break the relationship between you and your own perception. Andrew had not only lied to her, he had tried to turn her into the kind of person whose words no longer sounded trustworthy, even to herself. He called her crazy until the DNA test arrived. But the test did not make her sane. She had been sane all along. It only proved that the person trying to make her doubt her own mind had been the liar from the beginning. Some people are not afraid of lying. They are only afraid of the day the person beside them stops asking, "Am I crazy?" and starts asking, "Why do you need me to believe I am?" Claire did not win in the way people like stories to end. She did not leave her marriage with her heart intact. She lost her house, her trust, and many memories that had once felt warm. But in her small apartment on a quiet morning, as she poured her own coffee, opened the window to let in the cold air, and listened to the city waking somewhere far away, she realized she had taken back something Andrew once tried to steal: the right to believe herself. And sometimes, after a marriage built on sentences like, "You're remembering it wrong," "You're making too much of this," "You're crazy," standing alone in the truth, painful as it was the first time in years that Claire was truly safe.